Hi there, I'm James.
And I'm Emme.
And welcome back to The Bestiary, Monster Manual A through Z. And the monster or monsters of the week this week, Emme.
It's demon time! It's officially demon time!
Demon time. So, pretty significant, not just, this is the first part of the monster manual where we're talking about a section of monsters and not just monsters as individuals. Significant in terms of the lore, in terms of their connection to pretty much everything in D&D, in one way or another. Demons are a big deal.
They are literally limitless. The abyss, the font from which they spring, is literally a limitless plane. There are essentially infinite demons. So this is a big list. Unlike when we talk about angels, where it's very specific and codified and not very huge, and there's different kinds of celestials that do different kinds of things, demons are all inherently tied to each other. There's a way that demons can transform into each other based on the amount of blood they've spilled and the things they've conquered, and it's all, again, infinitely interwoven.
Yeah, this infinite chaos kept in check only by the fact that because of its chaotic nature, the abyss, the demons that that inhabit it, are constantly at war with each other and with the devils of the nine hells in a conflict known as the Blood War that we've covered in a couple of our previous videos, specifically about the Descent into Avernus campaign, big theme of that one. In fact, were the demons of the abyss not kept in check by that constant infighting and by the blood war and the blood spilled there, it's fairly inevitable that the abyss in its limitless destructive chaos would simply overwhelm everything else in existence. So yeah, it's kind of significant.
It's kind of a big deal. So just so you guys know about what we're going to be looking at in these episodes here where we talk about demons, we're going to be looking at specifically what is in this book, the Monster Manual, and what monsters have stat blocks. We're going to talk a little bit about the lore here. We're not going to necessarily go into demon lords in this episode. We love them very much and we haven't forgotten about them, but because their stat blocks aren't in this book, we're going to do a little bit of a deep dive on them when we get there later.
So yeah, emphasis that we're not going to mention them too much in this video, but they will of course merit being talked about later on, because from figures like Baphomet to Lolth to Inogu, their connection again to even just individual monster types to entire races is something that needs to be talked about, but we're going to save them for their own kind of special deep dive, later on. So for this, the Monster Manual actually really helpfully separates demons into different types, basically arranged around power, challenge ratings, similar kinds of roles or abilities from 1 to 6, and there are things that exist below a level 1 and things that exist above a level 6. And so we thought we'd start at the minor demons, the lowest of the low, beginning with things that are, I think, a little defined by their pathetic nature. Should we start with the Manus?
We sure should. We're breaking A to Z. Who even are we now? Yes, let's talk about
It's demons. They're chaotic. It's all out the window. All organization is gone.
It's over now. Okay, so yes, let's talk about the Manus. They are the lowest a demon can be. These are souls that have been trapped in the abyss or have fallen into the abyss. If you made a deal with a demon or something like that, you may have fallen, or when you died, you may have become a Manus, or they're just kind of bubbled up from the mud of the abyss. They're just sad and pathetic and gross, and they look it.
With kind of that blistered, broken skin, looks like kind of the worst, burn victim you ever did see. The sort of the curled back lips in that expression of pain and anger and frustration, the horrible sort of unnaturally thick ankles.
It looks like he's rotting downwards. Gravity is having an extreme effect on him, going down. And so everything just keeps getting thicker the closer you get to the ground. He reminded me almost instantly of the People Eater from Fury Road, just with that laughing nose, the face from disease just kind of falling into itself.
I see that.
Definitely that feeling of rot that you see a lot in things from the Abyss, that everything is just kind of caving in on itself.
These guys often ending up as food for greater demons than themselves. And if they're really lucky, they might be able to graduate and become a slightly less terrible thing.
Yeah, they'll just keep evolving into mildly less terrible things the more things they are able to personally destroy. So Amanes, they're not very bright, I think is probably the big reason you don't see a lot of graduation. And here they do describe that ascending and transforming into the form of a higher demon is in fact rare, and that's partially because Manes are just not able to handle that. Their intelligence is 3, their wisdom is 8, their charisma is 4. All of the things that would give them the ability to be ambitious and have that decision to evolve, those faculties just aren't there. So it might just happen by sheer force of nastiness.
Yeah, and of course these things are going to be, by the nature of the Abyss, virtually numberless. And so here and there, you're going to get a few that manage to graduate above their lowly station, but you're not going to get very many.
No. Which is why I think there's such a big break difference between the kind of cruddy demons and the super powerful demons. There's a big jump here that we're going to see between these ones we're going to talk about in this episode and some of the ones later, which suddenly go from like challenge rating 8th, challenge rating 1 to something huge and terrifying.
Yeah. These guys are 1/8 of a challenge. So, with an AC of 9 hit points, only 1 positive stat modifier.
And they understand Abyssal. They cannot speak. So you might be able to tell it to go somewhere if you speak Abyssal, but it probably won't listen to you. It is immune to a few things. It's immune to being charmed, poisoned. It's got dark vision. It's immune to poison. It's resistant to some magical damage. So it's got a couple of things going for it, but at some point
it's got to have something. It's got to have something going for it.
Because it's got nothing else. It's got claws. They do 2d4. A running theme here is I notice a lot of those early kind of cruddy monsters just have that d4. So unless you are fighting in the Abyss with a limitless amount of them, this guy's not too big. Although, if you do, and like a lot of demons, if you kill this guy on the material plane, even at this basic level, this guy reforms at the Abyss. So this is something that is a fairly universal stat block you're going to see.
Mm-hmm. Graduating up the ladder, though, or not all that far, we come to the Dretch. One of those creatures that I've previously established I have a little bit of a soft spot for because it is somewhat defined by the fact that it is terrible.
Even in the name, Dretch.
Just this horrid, snout-nosed, bat-eared, stunted green thing that just hoots and grunts and yells.
That's the literal description in the book too. Hoots, grunts, and yells. You can see how it makes that sound.
It is stupid and weak, and they know it as well. Like, they hate themselves. They know that their only real thing they have going for them is just ganging up together in mobs and just overwhelming with numbers, because that's basically all they get.
Yeah, that's something it says in the lore here in this book, is that they are self-loathing. Their biggest awareness is of the fact that they are terrible. I feel like you see that in the posture here on the art on this guy.
Yeah, they're just
there's something about the way his shoulders are being held. He looks useless. He's got this just weird body pattern. Everything about him is disjointed and weirdly built. Nothing looks like it fits together. He doesn't look like he moves well. His speed is only 20. You will outrun him walking.
Does get 2 attacks. So, for a quarter challenge rating, bite, claws, couple of resistances, immune to poison, It's telepathic, but it can only communicate telepathically with you if you know Abyssal.
Which is so bizarre and dumb to me, because it's not just that it can communicate telepathically, but only in Abyssal. The Abyssal only works if you speak Abyssal. He's just so useless. And then he's got, passive perception 9.
Like, how do you get a passive perception that low?
You're a Dretch. He's got some dark vision, he's immune to poison, he's got resistances cold, fire, lightning, so magic is a little bit harder on things, which is a theme that you will see in the Abyss, is that they're actually fairly magic resistant from a lot of the big damage types. So your wizards are going to have a little bit of a harder time with these guys.
Because, of course, demons being spawned from the infinite chaos of the Abyss, they're kind of made of the same stuff that the magic of the Weave is. Magic is generally seen as, putting control on chaos. And these guys are made of the same stuff. And so, they're going to be resistant to magical damage to some degree.
Oh, yeah. And this guy definitely is even again, at a base level, a little bit.
And hey, these guys even get a once-a-day ability.
They sure do. Boy, is it ridiculous. They just smell bad.
I've actually got a great experience with these guys, and again, really lends to that kind of soft spot I have for things that are just utterly pathetic. I once, in a fight, threw one of these guys at a level 8 party. It wasn't the only thing in the fight, but it appeared during it. What happened was it climbed out of a cauldron, promptly fell on its face, the group hacked it to pieces in a single turn, and just before it died, it was able to release this fetid cloud ability. And, if you fail that constitution save, DC 11, so not terribly high, it poisons you, which can be a serious thing, imposes disadvantage on all kinds of things. Every single member of the group passed. So essentially, it climbed out of the thing, fell on its face, died, and accomplished nothing. And I was so happy about that. Fart. Yeah. I was so happy about that.
Oh, Dretches. Bless your sweet little dumb hearts. And then we pop on over to the best of the worst, the Quasit. This little bug-looking dude with these little chitinous little scabbies on him. Is it bad I think this guy's cute?
He is in a really disturbing way. He's cute in the same way that, like, the gremlins of Gremlins are cute.
He does have that look with the ears and the mouth and the eyes, the demonic Furby look.
Well, actually, a thing I really like about how he's he, she, it, I don't know, thing, is represented in the art, in the manual, is that if you look at the ability Shape Changer, it says that it can transform into like a bat-like creature or a toad or like a centipede, and you can kind of see elements of all of those creatures in the design, with the horns, kind of chitinous pointy ears, the sort of greenish skin. It is kind of like if you take insect, frog, and bat and just like mash them together. And yeah, it's got the beady little eyes, the little mouth that you can just tell is making some kind of horrible noise. I initially was under the impression, because I've never actually dealt with quasits before as a DM or as a player. I was always under the impression that they were like small demons, but they're tiny.
They're cat-sized.
Like they can sit on your shoulder.
Scratch them ears. Yes, this is actually, because of its size, this reminds me of this fun green box up here that talks about the variant Quasit familiar.
Yeah.
So you might see these guys as a familiar, most commonly with warlocks. So if you have a warlock who's packed to the chain, one of the alternatives that you can see in there is you can get a Quasit familiar. But if you are not a warlock packed to the chain, you can still end up with a Quasit as your familiar, which is something that's still I'm working on figuring out, and obviously is between the DM and the player, so it's going to be different in every scenario. But if you meet a Quasit, you can actually make a deal with it that it could become your familiar. So you essentially learn summon familiar, but unlike a traditional familiar, it's it can end its service at any time. This guy can bugger off.
Yeah, and it says how they are easy to summon and eager to serve. And as a challenge rating 1, with magic resistance, with pretty, for a tiny thing, a decent little attack, some various resistances, immunities, etc. It's a pretty good familiar, but actually, especially given that if you're close enough to it, it extends that magic resistance to you.
That's wicked cool too.
But it's also going to be a real problem to have around, because it's not like it is bound to you. You've made like a little agreement with it. It can choose to end that at any time, as you say, and it is always going to be trying to mess things up.
Oh yeah, because unlike a familiar that's a little bit more traditional, it again, for a warlock this is slightly different, of course, but if you've made just a handshake agreement with this guy, he's got his own agenda. And he might be doing whatever he really wants to. This guy, we're starting to reach the point where this is going to be something you could have a conversation with. This guy's got an intelligence of 7, a wisdom of 10. I've met player characters with less than that. So, this is starting to reach the point where this is something that has something that it wants to do. And so if you've done that, this is going to be a little bit of a problem. It speaks common, so yeah, it can be a part of your party, but it's still not amazing.
I do love the idea of role-playing one of these.
Oh, again, you can hear his voice. You can hear his little voice. You know what this guy sounds like just based on the sound of the mouth. Yeah, and the teeth. He's gonna have just a unique sounding thing, and he's still, again, very strong for a familiar, but for a demon, still incredibly weak.
Oh, yeah.
Probably knows it, and it's just got some hilariously the scare.
I was gonna say it still gets a once a day ability.
It's scare.
Those are normally pretty good, right?
That's one of the funny things for me, again, about demons who just kind of know that they're terrible, which is part of the ambition to maybe destroy things and to gather more chaos and sow more destruction underneath you, is to know that you're maybe one day not going to be as awful and terrible. The scare, all right, you can be frightened of this thing. The DC is a 10 wisdom. It's a tiny little creature. It's going to go, and everybody's probably going to go, cool.
I mean, hey, at lower levels, you've got plenty of martial classes that don't tend to invest very heavily in wisdom.
That's very true. You might have your poor fighter or your poor paladin who's just going to go, oh, God!
Love the idea of like this heavily armed and armored paladin just turning on their heels and running from this little thing.
Little closet, and then it's running after it too. Because its speed is 40, actually. Its speed is 40. It will catch you. So I think this is our summation of our little demons. But of course, we have more to come. Thank you so much for joining us today on The Bestiary. Have you ever fought an army of dretches? Tell us just how bad they smelled down in the comments below. And while you're there, give this video a like and ting that bell, let you know when we put out more videos. And hit subscribe. We'd really love to see you more often. And we'll see you next time when we continue to talk about even scarier demons.
Oh no!